critical decisions that had life or death impacts. And so that, of course, would not have been possible without both, the entirety of the state coming together and the vendor community coming together to act. But it also points the direction towards some of the work we need to do going forward. And so part of this is about making sure that we've got the right foundation to be able to provide better digital services to the people of California. And make sure that we have the right scalability and stability as a baseline to ensure we get there. Of course, even before you get there, I see on the slide, the first thing that we have here is broadband, which is to say, in a world in which it is a public health risk to be able to be in person somewhere, broadband has become a de facto utility, or something that is just something that we rely on both for our work lives, for our kids' schooling, and for healthcare and socialization. And so obviously, this is illustrated by the fact that we're on Zoom right now. It's illustrated by the fact that I imagine many of you, like myself, have had kids at home through this process and have thought about the ways in which you needed to upgrade your own broadband internet at home to make sure that you and your partner and your kids can all stream on video at the same time. This is a critically important equity issue across the state of California. And it's really a sort of a baseline thing that if we're going to improve the services that we offer, for example, our unemployment insurance or the ability to get a driver's license, that's great and critically important. But we also need to make sure that people can access it. And that requires a bunch of foundational work that my colleague Stephanie Tom is going to talk more about shortly. But it's a critical piece of the puzzle. Part of this is also about what I think of as sort of digital shared services. So things like ca.gov and digital ID. So this is the sense that right now we have some duplication across the state when it comes to our web infrastructure. And some of it, and to our digital identification. So for those who've been paying close attention to EDD and DMV, you know that we've put in place pilots to be able to improve the way that we authenticate identification. This is obviously critically important in a world in which you are primarily getting a service online. We need to be able to say you are who you say you are so that we can give you the service that you deserve. These are issues where I think historically, both in terms of our web infrastructure and in terms of our digital identification, we've historically solved these problems on a program by program or department by department basis. And it's become increasingly apparent, obviously before the pandemic even, but especially post-pandemic, that these are issues that we need to tackle holistically as a state. So on ca.gov, one of the points I'd make is that we had started to experiment with more of a user-centric approach to our web presence as a state of California in advance of the pandemic. As soon as the pandemic hit, one of the most critical things for us to set up was a COVID-19 informational site. So covid19.ca.gov, which has now received millions and millions of daily usage. And so it's a high traffic site that is a really critical piece of our public health response to COVID-19 and a sort of a single source of truth for the way in which we get information out there into the world. Thinking about our web presence in a way that is centered on usability and making sure that the public can access the information that they need at the time that they need it is really important, and the ability to publish those changes quickly. I recognize I'm probably going long, so I'm going to jump to the future for a second, which is to say it's obviously important that we sort of set the right foundation to make sure that we can provide the services that Californians expect from us. But it's also just as important that we are continuing to build for the future. And so CDT is currently in the process of building out its next California technology strategy that it's going to publish on January 15th, 2021. But to offer a little bit of a preview about where we're headed, there are a couple of key themes. One is that we want to make sure that we are putting users first. And that means both the people of California, but also our state employees. At the end of the day, technology is a tool that is used by people to achieve a certain outcome or end, and we need to make sure that it's working for people in the way it's intended. And so there's that mental model, which is of course not new, but is critically important in the way that we're making decisions, both macro and micro. The second piece is this sense of we need to make sure that our velocity changes. And so one of the things that we've demonstrated in the context of the pandemic is that we can move fast and smart when needed. And we want to capture and harness some of that into our general ways of working, which is to say, we want to make sure that we're seeing real progress on some of our big initiatives in more regular timeframes than we might have historically. And so rather than seeing sort of, multi-month or multi-year processes to be able to get something into production, we want to be able to see that more in weeks and months. And again, that is just accelerating a trend that was already there. Looking at Amy, obviously we began talking about this, 5-10 years ago at this point. And it started off as a pilot, as a side piece of the way that we worked as a state. And I think it's just increasing over time, and it's becoming more of the default way of working. And then the third thing is that there's more foundational work we need to do, both investing in our people across the state workforce, investing in some of their systems and processes, so some of the standards that we set as the Department of Technology, and then of course in some of the collaborative tools and infrastructure that's required for us to work effectively as a state. And so there's a lot more there, but hopefully that gives at least an indication of both how our thinking is being shaped by where we are today, some of the work that we're going to do to help build that foundation and progress forward. So with that, I think I have the opportunity to introduce my colleague, Stephanie. Catherine, could you go to the next page? Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, I'd like, so my colleague Stephanie is the Deputy Director of Broadband and Digital Literacy, and she has the pleasure of talking about the broader effort that we are doing collectively to help meet the moment when it comes to broadband internet access. Stephanie.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. I wanted to give an overview and an update on all the great activities that are happening in broadband. I will make this quick because my connection has been a little bit spotty, but really great to be able to present this morning. First of all, I want to thank everyone for all of your support, frankly, through the broadband efforts. Broadband has had quite a year, and we've been really focusing, of course, on achieving broadband for all. We have been able to, of course, work very closely with many of the providers, and I truly appreciate your support, whether it be providers providing feedback and comment during this process, of course, of creating the broadband action plan, whether it be other providers and technology firms stepping in.
Why don't I jump in and take over for Stephanie?
She has a broadband issue.
The irony is not lost on any of us.
Oh.
The governor announced the broadband executive order back in August, which helped set the frame for the work that we need to do across the state of California, across departments, to be able to help leverage both the power, insights, and authority of the state to be able to help meet this moment. But it also set out the requirement to build out an action plan to say, hey, what are we going to do as a state to be able to ensure that we're driving towards an environment where all Californians can have access to affordable, reliable broadband internet, and also the devices and the skills that they need to leverage them. So over the course of the past several weeks, we've been running a set of listening sessions with stakeholders. So both, with the public at large, with the incumbent internet service providers, with local governments, and with tribes, to help inform both an understanding of where we are today, but also what is the work that we need to do collectively to be able to help meet the enormity of the challenge that we have at our disposal. This is, if you think about the challenge we have with broadband, one of the things that I think has been nicely brought into sharp relief in the context of the pandemic is how important both the access is, but also like the quality, reliable access. For those of us who, again, have multiple people that are relying on the same connection, understanding, upload speeds as well as download speeds and latency to be able to run video conferencing becomes really important. There's a piece of this which is also, and so there's a piece that's very much on the infrastructural side to make sure that we are providing the right access to people throughout the state of California at a standard that can enable people to do the things that they need to do, which is, by the way, a different standard than what we have codified today. The second piece is we need to be able to ensure that we're driving adoption among particularly, there are a set of communities within California, particularly low-income communities, communities of color, tribes, older Californians that have had lower adoption rates of broadband internet, even when there might be infrastructural access. Some of that's driven by affordability, some of it's driven by other factors, but that's a piece of work that we need to continue to do. And then the third piece is around really driving equity around use, because it's insufficient if you have a subsidized broadband connection, but you actually don't have a device to be able to use it, or the skills to be able to avail yourselves of the opportunity provided by using broadband internet. And so to the extent, we are very much in a open and collaborative mode in terms of engaging providers, local governments. We also want to open that up to the vendor community because this is very much an effort that's going to require all of us. And I would be remiss, and I'm sorry for not saying this at the beginning, stepping into Stephanie's lane, but I would be remiss in not thanking the vendor community and providers for stepping up to help meet the particular moment of the broadband challenges that we faced in the context of the pandemic. We've had, both providers providing more subsidized or no-cost internet access. We've had donations of devices and wireless hotspots, and that is an incredibly important piece of the puzzle, and we want to continue to build upon that partnership and strengthen that going forward. And I see that Jules has also added, this was just me. There's the Broadband Council website, for those that are interested, includes the videos of all stakeholder meetings as well as a draft copy of the Broadband Action Plan. The council's next meeting is going to be on November 18th. And so if there's any interest, please go to the California Broadband Council website where you can find some more information. So with that, should I introduce, Catherine, if you go to the next page.
I think it's me. It's Pam,
perfect.
and I'm next to talk about AI.
Well, Pam is in charge of our AI initiative, and let's go from here. Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Justin. So we have a statewide AI initiative that's going on that we've started in the last few months. It got a little postponed due to COVID, but we were able to re-engage and get it going. And the goal of this initiative is to really promote a strategy and a standard approach that helps us implement AI technologies within state government. We are also recognizing that departments are at various levels of AI awareness, and we've designed the initiative to accommodate and address those various needs as we go through over the next few months. So the deliverables are going to provide something of value to everyone, no matter where you're at, whether you're brand new to AI or whether a department is already currently using it. So I think the slide talks about the three major objectives, and the objectives start out kind of more broad and generalized with work, and then it becomes a little more tangible and pragmatic as we go along. So in the first objective is to demonstrate how leveraging AI can improve the delivery and digital services for California. And that's really where we're focusing on this fall. And what we've done is we've started with the first step with academia, and we've partnered with the Citrus Policy Lab. And they're studying the current AI use cases and where we are with the state. And they're going to produce a report which provides some baseline recommendations that's going to help develop and inform our strategy and policy around AI adoption within state government. So we're taking basically what we can already learn from industry and what's already being done as kind of our starting point here. And the purpose of the report and this particular objective is really to help state entities become aware of how AI can be valuable in the delivery of government services. And along with that, we're also started a community of practice for state government, where we're really looking at, what are we doing and kind of help the education and awareness of the AI. Then with objective 2 is to provide a strategy and guidelines on ethical and responsible use of AI. And that's really, the purpose of that is really to engage the public and the legislature to help really develop confidence and establish trust in the state's ability to implement ethical AI. So that next step is really where we need public input. And that includes, again, the legislature and industry. The report will be ready in mid-December to share, and then we will be scheduling some listening session in February of next year. And that's really an opportunity to provide feedback and input before we develop the strategy framework, policies if they're needed, and playbooks that become a little more practical along the way. So then the third objective is to provide practical and pragmatic approach on implementing AI technology. And that really purpose of that objective is to help the state entities and the vendor community to have practical tools to support and drive ethical AI adoption. So that's where we'll be developing, the playbooks. The community of practice will move to more of a how to go forward. We'll be creating an AI vendor pool, and we'll be doing a lot of training for business and technical, both sides of the coin there. So the AI initiative is really going to help us launch the responsible and ethical use of AI. And that's really a key component on how we're going to improve digital services for government. Then on the next slide, I just wanted to talk about a few policies. I'm not going to dive down deep into these, but I just want to make you aware in case that you're not. These are some things that have happened over the last couple of months. On August 25th, there was an update to the cloud security standard. Again, this was just an update. It's not a new policy, but it just it updated the minimum cloud security requirements for cloud computing services. Then there was another update on October 20th for the phishing exercise standard, and that updated some of the requirements for simulated phishing exercises and the measurement, how you measure progress. And then coming soon is going to be an update on the cybersecurity metrics, maturity metrics, and that's going to provide some additional scoring and an updated checklist. So just wanted to bring to your attention a couple of small policy updates that have occurred. And then, of course, coming soon is possibly some AI policies. And again, I preface that with only if they're needed. We're not going to write policy to write policy, but we expect that there will be probably some guidelines in the policy framework around the use of AI. And that will be coming in the spring of 2021. And that's going to be after the listening session and after we get input. And then it's also just a reminder that AB 434 recertification for departments is due on July 1st of 2021. So all the departments will be recertifying their websites. Okay, so that is up for me. That is all for me. And I believe next is Ellen Ishimoto, and she's going to provide an update on technology services.
Thank you, Pam. Hey, just one request for everybody is to check to see if you're muted. We're hearing some kids' voices. So just wanted to see if you can go ahead and mute. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm Ellen Ishimoto, the acting state chief technology officer, and I'll be turning things over to Cammie Dudley in a moment to talk about Calnet. I know that's where everybody's interested. Okay, so next slide, Catherine. So I think the last time we met, we talked about, hey, our focus is going to be, we got to eliminate outdated hardware and software at the data center. And I think with COVID, it really, accentuated the point that we need to eliminate outdated hardware and software. We saw many cases where some critical systems within the state weren't keeping up. And we were dealing with outdated hardware software with all the COVID work that was being done. So we are going to be really focusing in on truly eliminating hardware and software and taking some hard stands. We cannot continue to be in the situation where we can't scale our systems, we can't modify the systems, and it's all because we're still running outdated software and hardware. So I'm going to ask the vendor community to help us in that effort. we're going to be working with our customers to let them know where we have that situation, and we're going to remedy that, not just at the data center, but we need to do this across the state, no matter where that system and service is being hosted. So we're going to continue to focus on that. Other things that we're doing at the data center is also we're continuing to implement SD-WAN technology with our vendor partner. And then we also are standing up really our managed services in the cloud. So we really been talking about, we want it to be location agnostic on where the data and the systems reside. So this is us getting down to doing that, where we can manage any system for our customers, the infrastructure and platform, no matter if it's on-prem at the data center or in the cloud. So we're there now, and we're going to be starting to host that for customers. So those are some of the things that we're working on. And then I'll turn it over to Cami, and she can share about the latest with Calnet.
Thanks, Ellen. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Cami Dudley. I'm managing the Calnet program here at CDT and OTEC. So real quick, our update is that in April of this year, Calnet awarded the categories of MPLS, Metro Area Ethernet, and Internet services, both flat rate and sustained bandwidth options. So these are services replacing our expiring Calnet 3 contracts that will expire at the end of 2021. So we're well underway. And then in September, we awarded a new category. It's category 30 for broadband services. And then momentarily, we'll be issuing a notification of award for the next category, a series of categories, which is VoIP services. So it's the traditional VoIP services that we have, and also a cloud-based VoIP service. And then next on deck is replacing the Calnet 3 categories for the IVR and contact center. So our goal is to have more variety of solutions for the customers, and that is in progress. So you can see the link at the Cal eProcure for the key action dates on this IFB that has been split up into sort of multiple groupings of awards, with the intent of being able to get as many providers on there as possible to get more options to our state and local customers. I will say that we have updated our Calnet website where we have our service catalog, and it includes the new categories. And as the documents are available, folks can go out there and see the contracts and the catalogs on a flow basis. So you can look there for updates as well. And then finally, CDT is going out with a contract to replace the expiring satellite voice services that are going to also end with Calnet 3. And that's been released. I think it's in the question answer phase. And it's also going to roll in the satellite data contracts that are
this call is now being recorded.
That are a fair number of departments have their own contracts. So this will be a statewide to also provide services to them as their contracts expire in the coming 1 to 2 years. So I think that is it for the big ticket items on deck for Calnet. And next, please welcome Manveer Bola to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andrea Spears. I'm the Acting State Chief Technology Innovation Officer. I'll be talking about a few areas that we've been working on in enterprise technology, and that would include data, GIS, web, some cloud operations items, and then artificial intelligence. So in the data realm, we've really made some major leaps here, especially with the COVID pandemic, in using big data tools to deliver critical information and inform the public through our public websites, and then also support governmental decision making at the highest levels. So as part of that, we've implemented a lot of had a lot of focus on and implemented a data warehouse, which acted as the single source of truth for all the COVID and fires and other emergency type of data. We've also did a lot of work in building out some data pipelines, as well as implementing some ETL tools to make sure that that data is easily extracted from the state's various systems, cleaned up and made usable. And then the third area of that is we've done a lot of data analysis, data visualizations and reporting So I'm sure many of you have seen the COVID dashboards and the visuals that are out on the web. They've gotten millions and millions of hits, so they're very successful. All of this data work, even though it was implemented as part of the COVID response, it's also in alignment with the new state data strategy. That's something that the state Chief Data Officer, Joy Bonaguro, put out a couple months ago. So if you haven't seen that, I'd highly recommend you taking a look at that. The third area where we're making a lot of progress is GIS, where we use spatial data to drive public awareness and emergency preparedness. The biggest output we've seen with this is again with the COVID response, but also fires and power shutoff events. So the response.ca.gov is a good example of using the power of GIS in order to provide the public with critical information. So that's what we've been working on, and there's a lot more to come in that area. We're also just getting started on developing a state GIS strategy. So you could probably expect to see that sometime next year. And in the web realm, on the website, we have been on the path for several months now, but we've really put it into high gear on creating more user-centered websites and digital services. So we've been practicing the new way of working and using user research, using effective content design, making sure we put accessibility first, and also making sure our websites are a lot lighter and consume a lot less bandwidth to make sure that they're accessible to any Californian, no matter what kind of device they use, and that would also help in our broadband efforts. The biggest example of this is again COVID-19.ca.gov. That website takes into consideration all these different design methods, and it's highly successful. It's been getting millions and millions of hits as well. Another key area in the web realm is greater use of analytics to drive and prioritize our content. So we've been doing a lot of work in maturing the state's web analytics capabilities, so we could better understand our consumers. California is huge, 40 million people, very diverse economically, as well as in various other areas. So web analytics is the key to making and to helping us understand the public and designing our websites more effectively. Next slide, please. All right. The fourth area I want to talk about was CloudStream. This is kind of more on the operations side, where we're building an infrastructure that is, again, highly scalable, resilient, yields greater speed, along with in partnership with the state data center and Ellen's team. We've been looking a lot on unifying infrastructure as a code processes around cloud providers, so diversifying our cloud providers. In order to do that, we've implemented standardized approaches so we could easily pivot to different cloud providers as needed. This also enables us to have easier failover and redundancy if we do need to have a switch over very quickly. We're looking at speeding up our certificate management processes, building a pipeline around that so we could get secure certificates out quickly, since we do stand up websites very quickly. Another area we're focusing on now, and we're just getting started, but we think it's going to be important in the future, is exploring quantum technology use cases to see how we could use that technology a little better. We realize that with our secure certificates, there's a risk with quantum technology on that may cause those certificates to become weaker, and it may risk the website encryption that we currently use. So we're looking at ways to counteract that or use quantum technology to our benefit in making sure our websites are more secure. Secret management is another area we've been looking at to better manage our passwords and keys. And then lastly, building a pipeline as a code. This is key in speeding up our time to market, building apps and websites more quickly. We're looking at pipeline as a code to provide guardrails that ensure code meets standards and is secure while it's being developed. So we would scan and check standards while code is in development. That way, through our CI/CD pipeline, it is more effectively implemented and faster. And lastly, on artificial intelligence, machine learning, goal here from our perspective at least is to make sure that our digital services are tailored to meet specific user needs. So we've been looking at using cognitive services to provide richer language translations. That's a big thing, especially on the web diversity front, making sure that we could translate websites quickly and make sure those are very good translations and are understandable and provide the information that people need. So AI is going to be big with that. Leveraging bots to perform conversational style exchanges. So greater use of bots on websites. Also, another thing which was big in the COVID response is surveys. We've put out a lot of surveys to ask people kind of their thoughts and measure sentiment. With that, we've received a lot of responses. So we're looking at AI to try to help us boil down those responses into much more meaningful output that we can consume easier, maybe even measuring sentiment. So we're looking at using AI to help us with that. And then finally, this is something that we started on last year, is the optical character recognition to improve accessibility, and that's the OCR bot. We're looking at continuing to mature that solution to help us make sure our websites are accessible. With that, that kind of a reminder that next summer is the next AB 434 requirement to certify. So a lot of the state's websites will be, again, looking at accessibility to make sure that our websites are compliant by next July. All right, with that said, I will hand it over to Vitaly Panich to talk about security.
Thank you, Manveer. I'm Vitaly Panich, Acting State Chief Information Security Officer. Good morning, everybody. So this morning, I wanted to provide a couple brief updates on our statewide security operations, as well as followed by a few governance items. So first of all, with our Security Operations Center, during the course of the pandemic, we were forced to kind of have to be more available and more efficient, more effective. So we have to really work smarter in how we apply our security defense mechanisms and response tactics. With that, we built up a highly scalable virtual SOC. So we're fully virtual within our security operations practice, where all of our analysts can work from home. They can do all their techie incident response work and security monitoring work from home remotely. So I'm definitely pretty proud of the team that helped make it happen. So our SOC is fully leveraging CI/CD pipelines in order to facilitate a lot of the tooling and support infrastructure, automated code deployments. We're also enabled the SOC to be highly available using geographic load balancing redundancy. So literally our analysts can work anywhere in the country, given any kind of disaster recovery scenarios, which may or may not happen, obviously. So we're definitely proud of building those kind of security controls into our tooling infrastructure of the SOC. We've also enhanced a lot of the process, manual type of work that traditional SOC analysts conduct. And we've done that using certain tooling known as the security automation and orchestration and automation frameworks, which allow us to facilitate essentially business processes or workflows, or in the security world, we call them playbooks. Playbooks that model certain attack tactics, techniques, and procedures in the adversary world, that model them to a standardized framework, and then we measure and baseline against that standardized framework to see how effective our coverage is between the data we do collect, the analytics we do collect. And the analytics we do collect today are primarily around our CGen infrastructure, around our data center, and we're also starting to cover some of the internal networks within some of our state agencies, departments that sit within our network. So I'm definitely proud of the team that made that happen as well. And like Manveer or a few folks mentioned, during the course of the pandemic, many teams assembled together and deployed apps and applications pretty quickly, almost on a cadence and on a daily basis in some weeks. So we've literally built in some of these orchestration and log collection mechanisms into the application deployment processes. So as soon as an application gets stood up, we're automatically collecting and ingesting security telemetry into our SOC. So that's definitely a worthy achievement in our goal to automate and make the SOC more efficient and effective. Additionally, we're working towards anonymizing and exchanging threat intelligence. So within the state of California, obviously we're a big net, we're a big target. We see a lot of data coming in and out of our agencies. Some of that data is attack and malicious traffic. So we're able to normalize that data, anonymize it, and be able to share it with other SOCs, with other security operations practices within the state, as well as partnering up with the California Cybersecurity Integration Center to be the conduit to share threat intelligence with external sources. And share threat intelligence is bidirectional. So we're able to consume threat intelligence via APIs into our SOC tool sets that we correlate through CalSIC as well. Additionally, we're also involved with building CalSIC 2.0 is what we call internally. CalSIC 2.0 is its primary mission will be focused on operationalizing incident response, formalizing threat intelligence practices, like I said, exchanging threat intelligence between SOCs so that we're operating in unison and at a greater scale instead of operating in silos as an operational group. So facilitating a formalized threat intelligence practice. And then on top of that, really building a cyber terrain map, if you will, of our state agencies, and then enriched by threat intelligence we receive from feds, from private organizations, and any other partners that partner with CalSIC. So that really allows us to prioritize a little bit better, work smarter, back to the efficiency point, and apply the right defense mechanisms to the right threats that actually are relevant to state operations. So it's really making us be a little bit more smarter as an operational group as well. Additionally, use of artificial intelligence. Over the course of the year, we've been deploying artificial and machine learning sensors within the data center network to study and model and baseline our internal traffic and look for any kind of unusual internal lateral activity in order to increase our defense structure. Next slide, please. So on the governance side, we mentioned we made an update to the cloud security policy, which also references a newly released SIM, what we call the 5315B. It's a cloud security standard. Some of the major points that standard covers are akin or in parallel with platforms that provide cloud workload protection capabilities or cloud security posturing capabilities. So obviously, cloud security is a shared responsibility between the consumer or a state agency or a customer leveraging a platform within the cloud and the provider and as a service provider. So we realize that, and we're aligning or governing our state agencies to be able to implement certain security standards within their platforms, whether it be infrastructure as a service or platform as a service environment. So if you guys reference that standards update within 5315, that'll outline all the things that a customer or a state agency must do in order to secure their applications or workloads within their environments. Additionally, SLP Plus. So we're also leveraging SLP Plus as an onboarding and a marketing mechanism for our state agencies and for the private sector. So we're encouraging folks that sell products and services that facilitate cloud workload protection and cloud security posture management, or any of those security requirements that one of our state entities must implement and must achieve. those are in the requirements section of your onboarding process for SLP Plus. So that really entails a manufacturer or service provider meeting or testing that they meet those requirements in order to help one of our state departments augment the goal of the security requirement or the outcome of that requirement. So that's really similar to the structure we followed with endpoint protection. So definitely encourage folks to explore that procurement vehicle for cloud workload protection platforms. Additionally, what this is not an onboarding or a procurement vehicle for the infrastructure or platform as a service environment itself. It's really intended to onboard those wraparound services that enhance security or that augment security for the customer using a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service environment. So definitely encourage folks to pursue and look at SLP Plus to offer and market such services and products to ultimately help our agencies achieve those requirements in a most effective and easy way. The next steps we'll also be creating categories on SLP Plus for vulnerability management platforms, and then InfoSec or information security awareness services. Those are your phishing simulation products, your security education products, and so forth. So definitely encourage folks to look at that and reach out to the SLP team at DGS or my office. And those are my updates. And now I will introduce Andrea Spears with the IT Project Delivery Office. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly, and good morning to everyone on the call. Happy to have so many guests today here to talk with us. So as Vitaly said, I'm Andrea Spears. I am the Deputy Director in the Office of Statewide Project Delivery and also the State Chief Project Officer. And go ahead and go to the next slide. What I'd like to talk to you about today very briefly really is what's happening in our office. We heard a lot about some of the changes that are going to be happening, in the technology world, and these things will really the way that things are changing are going to impact projects. And I wanted to share a little bit with you about that. And then I will hand it over to Marlon Palo, who is our Chief Procurement Officer, who will tell you a little bit more from a procurement's perspective. So the Office of Statewide Project Delivery, and I always like to sort of emphasize this, is obviously we want to make sure that looking across the state and the statewide from a statewide perspective, that we're around oversight, and that oversight does not only occur during project execution, but it occurs, early on before projects are even really beginning to plan. It happens during the, the planning period, during the many procurements that are going on, during that, planning when the projects and the departments are participating in the project approval lifecycle, as well as when projects are actually implementing and actually moving into M&O. I like to emphasize that just to make sure that, everyone understands our role. There are always, opportunities, to partner with the state, for vendors. We rely so heavily on that partnership, and we value that partnership. And I like to share always, a little, with this group, around the kinds of opportunities that are happening really through some of the metrics that we have going on in our office. Now we've got there's always over 70 projects that are, in the planning process very formally at CDT. But there are countless projects that are being planned that really are outside the purview of the Department of Technology. So there are so many, opportunities, for those vendor partnerships. most or all of those projects that are planning currently, have procurements, and we need your help. And we look to the folks, in the vendor community to come to help us to be thinking partners to figure out how to really put those users first, as we heard early on in the in the talk, put those users first and get valuable and meaningful, products out to our users through projects, as they're being planned and as they're being executed and as we're doing procurements. What I really wanted to focus on before turning it over to Marlon, though, is really in terms of the look ahead and how, the state is beginning to evolve. What we heard is that, rather than having long, conversations, with departments, with program leadership about, what it is what the solution is, what we want to deliver, we want to approach things a little differently. We want to go rapidly. We want to be smart. But rather than having those conversations going into, too much analysis, let's see, what the vendor community can, help to deliver, to Californians and to, our government workers to help to make their days better. So in order to do that, to make our, users, come first, we have to have a different kind of a conversation with our departments. We have to ask different questions and do things differently. And so as we start to sort of shift those conversations, to making sure that, users are receiving, products sooner, that they're receiving, products incrementally, that we're having the right conversations. And as that happens, we know that our reliance upon the vendor community is just going to get even heavier, and our partnership will continue to grow. A couple of things that you can expect to see from us, sort of as a result of some of this, is really how we look at projects in terms of, looking at them more broadly. We're looking at things more from the level of the IT portfolios, and not just in terms of the projects that are in the portfolio, but how those projects are being selected and how we can do whatever we can to make sure, as I said, that we are putting users first. We will likely see change to the way that the project approval lifecycle, is laid out, because if we're going from delivering projects, in months and years to, delivering value in weeks or months, then obviously the way that we plan projects, the way we plan that continuous, improvement to services is going to have to change. So we can, we expect to make some changes, in those regards. Just a couple of other points in terms of things that are coming. Project cost delegation, or the accreditation process that we have that allows departments to be able to undergo projects sort of on their own without our oversight. That's something that we implemented recently. Some departments, coming up here will be able to do a little bit more with the delegation that they have. We have an iterative project report pilot that is in the works. As some of you may be aware, there are the special project reports that tell the vendor community exactly sort of what a replan is for a project. This type of a report will also provide that transparency, but it is designed specifically for agile or iterative projects. So you can expect to see, again, as I said, changes in the way that we are planning, changes in the information that you're going to see about projects. And we think that that's going to open up many, many, many opportunities, again, for that state partnership. So with that, I will go ahead and turn our talk over to Marlon Paulo, and he'll share with you more from IT project delivery, but from a procurement perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. Marlon Paulo here, Deputy Director for Statewide Technology Procurement. Just like what Amy mentioned earlier, we have been continue move the needle for procurement. So from last year, it was 18-24 months time frame down to 6 months. Now it's 14 days or three weeks. So it seems like we're improving, and I want to help recognize that we won't be successful without you guys' help. All right. So I really appreciate everyone's participation, continuous engagement, and definitely the opportunity here will open up for some more improvements that we're gonna venture together. So how do we approach that? There's a lot of innovative and iterative procurements that we've been doing, but the key that we have applied is really this POC, proof of concept or proof of technology, that allows us to divide or have a multi-stage, multi-phase procurement so that we can realize early the solutions, the services, the capabilities, the functionalities early on prior to contract award. So helping us achieve those is really instrumental in a lot of the solicitations that we have been going through. And another aspect that we also leverage is the problem statement approach. Rather than being prescriptive, 1,000 number of requirements, we are solely focusing on, business objectives, business goals, identifying the key problems, and allowing the community to really solicit or provide us the ideas, your innovative solutions, or alternative approaches to help achieve or solve our problem, rather than the state being prescriptive or identifying a solution early on. That has been instrumental in a lot of our COVID technology because it was one of those immediate pandemic needs that we don't really have a lot of time to analyze. So we need a partnership from everyone, and I'm really glad that you guys are contributing in that. And we've adjusted also in digital bid submissions. So if you guys are recognizing, a lot of our solicitations are going through online portals. Those are tools that we have that allows us to do this efficiently. And there was a theme earlier also that AI, that I want to also help recognize that the procurement has also been adopting or trying to apply AI approach for the state. If you guys haven't seen the write-up from World Economic Forum, there is a procurement in a box. CDT is, preparing ourselves into this AI machine learning, and procurement is one of the key factors in adopting those technology moving forward. So more to come on those. It's very exciting. So it's one of the innovative things that we want to make sure that everyone is aware that we're tackling on also. The third thing that I also want to express is the market research. We have expanded the way we engage the community. As you may recall, back in September, even last year, we had a vendor day. We've had a vendor day for DMV again this year. It was very successful. So we're looking at those with branching out with other departments, because vendor day has been a widely accepted, I would say, approach to recognize in the market research. And vendors, community has been giving us positive feedback. We still have RFIs. If you recognize, we had recently released a vaccine management system, request for information. So I appreciate everyone's participation in that. During this pandemic, this COVID, we also had a TSG portal. This is a Technology Solutions Group portal, COVID-19, tech.covid19.ca.gov. So any COVID-related solutions that you guys may have, please feel free to enter your solution or your services onto that portal. It is a huge repository of information that we harvest, contacts, and ideas for anything that comes up in related to COVID. And definitely CalEProcure is still one of the areas that we publish a lot of these things. So if you guys haven't registered into CalEProcure, please continue registering in CalEProcure. Next one, here's a few things to watch out for. CDCR's IWTS, Inmate Ward Telephone System. We are in the RFP process on those, making sure that you guys are aware it's in CalEProcure. Cami mentioned also that we are looking at satellite voice and data. So in anticipation for other customers using satellite services, we want to have a statewide contract with multiple vendors be awarded at the end of the solicitation. So please watch out for that and participate if you can. And a week and a half ago, I believe, we did a CWS vendor conference. So anticipating that the CWS Cares project has multiple solicitations that is expected to release here shortly. And those are something that have been aligning our new approach for projects. So making sure that vendors feel free to participate in those. And last one, Caltrans, we have a transportation system network replacement. Another critical solution for Caltrans, Department of Transportation. And there are several market research coming out as well, just to recognize that there are COVID-19 related market research that we're continue gonna go through. Please feel free to participate on those. I'll hold off on the question at the end. I think that was our intent. So for the next slide, I will pass it down to my good friend, Tim Murphy. He is the Acting Chief Enterprise Architect.
Well, good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Everybody having fun? Learning some new things, I hope. There's an awful lot going on, as Marlon was just saying there. So we can move to the next slide. I only have a few things to present real briefly. And it's really about the Office of Enterprise Architecture is really a statewide view into the architectural practices used throughout the state. So given the changes that have happened in this pandemic and during this situation here that we've all experienced the past several months, and as Justin mentioned earlier, the more holistic view, kind of a strategy orientation, business being the reason for all of this technology in the first place. So it's all about delivering services to people. And with that, I mean, our office is doing our best to advance the vision of what architecture is from a business perspective. That goes to Amy's point of being data driven, right? We have so much information now. We're making good progress in coordinating some of that information, and with Manveer and others' help to get that information presented in a useful way. Ideally in collaboration with vendor partners and the architectural community or the architects within a department, if you happen to be working on a project within a department, should help facilitate making really well-informed, best for business decisions on that particular project. That's kind of the core of what we're all about, is best for project decisions, best for business. And with that said, the enterprise architecture framework has been in revision here for I don't know, several months now. It should be released for public consumption around Thanksgiving. We're revising the website is going to be revised to reflect the new structure, which has moved from the useful structure that it was before, the original or the 2.0 version of the enterprise architecture framework. There was an awful lot of theory and things in there. We're moving towards more pragmatic, practical, applied technique to be used statewide. And to help other departments grow the enterprise architecture programs that many have, that some need to maybe elevate just a little bit to help with decision making at the right levels. So all of that said, we're with the changes in the technologies advancing so quickly and the changes in project delivery methods resulting from some of this pandemic and other reasons, as Justin mentioned early on, these changes have been kind of in work for quite a while. They've just been expedited via this pandemic. We're hoping to move a little bit more from the mindset of project to, as Andrea mentioned, more portfolio orientation, and that orientation is more often around products or services than it is around projects. So we're kind of moving into the more iterative world of design and focused more on the reusable or componentized system development and the approaches to do that with multiple disciplines working together in more iterative, rapid fashion. And ideally, that business-oriented design really helps expedite the project delivery itself and the associated procurement, whatever it is that's being procured to deliver the best for business product at that time. So with all of that said, I'll cut it a little bit short here. With the statewide architecture community, we have about 180 or so active participants that meet and confer monthly. So if you have occasion to be working on a product or service or project with the department, please reach out to their architect or their office of enterprise architecture at that department. They should help facilitate expediting the efforts. And with that, there's always room for continued education and professional growth. So I'm going to hand it off to Brenda. Well,
Hi,
Brenda?
good morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I know we've been sitting here for quite a while now, for over an hour, so I just want to hit a few of the high topics in the Office of Professional Development. So as we've heard from other speakers today, we all have had to shift how we deliver our services given today's climate. And since all of our academies and trainings were delivered in person at our training center in Rancho Cordova, we had to do a dramatic shift to online distance learning. The good news is that online classes have proven to be favored over the in-person classes we had, and we are now able to reach out to more potential students as they no longer need to deal with travel issues. We are attempting to solicit more participation from our local government and public entities, and we currently have one county partner that has been participating more regularly. And then even after the pandemic ends, we expect to deliver most of our courses via virtual platform moving forward. Now, OPD runs 4 leadership academies throughout the year, with each program running between 8 to 17 weeks. Now, our longest running program is our Information Technology Leadership Academy, ITLA, and it will run next year from January 6 to May 7. This academy will be primarily virtual, if not entirely virtual. And we'll have new exciting courses such as virtual executive presentations, which is obviously different from the in-person sessions that we used to hold. Managing remote teams, systems thinking, strategic planning, and innovation for leaders. We continuously solicit feedback from both students and IT leaders as to which courses are the most relevant to their needs at any given time. We then take that feedback into consideration when we plan the next academy, and we make applicable revisions to the programs. And additionally, we go through the same continuous improvement process with our open registration courses. These are courses we have on the OPD CDT website, and any IT state employee can peruse the course catalog and sign up for upcoming classes in which they're interested. Some of our newer course offerings include blockchain fundamentals, machine learning, AI, UI, UX, practical user design and experience, as well as some new upcoming cybersecurity courses. CDT is participating on the Governor's Office Cybersecurity Task Force on the Workforce Development and Education Subcommittee. I always joke that it's such a mouthful. This subcommittee attempts to address the skills and capability gaps that currently exist in the cybersecurity field, which is well documented with an estimated staff shortage of 350 to 400,000 nationally and around 37,000 statewide. This subcommittee is working on a framework for the design, development, and implementation of a California cybersecurity model curriculum, academic standards, extracurricular activities such as hackathons and cyber competitions, professional and career development, and apprenticeships. The overarching goal is to develop this model and pipeline to meet the California workforce needs. We have developed a curriculum for a BA degree in cybersecurity that's planned to launch in the fall of 2021 at the CSU schools and UC schools with a 2,000-hour on-the-job apprenticeship component. A virtual industry convening was held with education partners in early September to solicit input from private and public sector employers to find out what types of skills and experience they want to see in potential employees to fill these critical cybersecurity gaps. And then lastly, we have our education pipeline development, which is the overall effort to help develop a pipeline for students to transition from high school to community college to CSUs and UCs to obtain the specific educational requirements that will better prepare them for a successful transition from school into the workforce. This requires collaboration with educators at various institutions to develop the appropriate curriculum needed, working with the state to determine the minimum qualifications needed to enter into IT state class positions, and working with vendors for assistance in after-school activities such as hackathons and various cyber competitions. This effort goes hand in hand, obviously, with the efforts that I just spoke about in the Governor's Office Cybersecurity Task Force. So these activities sum up the high priority efforts OPD is currently engaged in, and we continue to adapt as the state workforce needs evolve. So with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is John Mann over our legislation department. Good morning, John. Is John on?
Well, hey, technology, got to unmute us here.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. I want to also introduce Matt Bender, who's my counterpart over at Department of General Services. So we're kind of going to jointly speak to just some high-level thoughts. As most of you know, we're in the second year of a two-year legislative session. This year was heavily impacted by the COVID, pandemic. Most of the bills that were related to technology did not move forward, and they obviously ran the gamut. And as folks know, the only legislation that was allowed to move forward by the legislature had to be some relation or nexus to the COVID response. However, there are two I want to highlight, and then Matt's going to speak to 588. And this is for employers, for all employers in the state of California. It is COVID related. It requires employers to notify their employees through written notification with specific instructions of an employee within the workplace who's been exposed to COVID. Not necessarily a technology related bill, but it does impact state employers. So just want to let you know about that. And that's AB 688 by Reyes, and that was signed by the governor. Another bill that was of interest, it's dealing with some technology and application, obviously facial recognition. There's a CHOW bill AB 904, that requires law enforcement to seek a court order to utilize an application related to facial recognition technology. So just of note there. Moving forward, obviously, as some folks were watching Proposition 24 on the state ballot, the privacy initiative, it looks like that is going to prevail. Does have some requirements, obviously, on disclosure, allowing consumers to opt in, opt out. We'll wait and see what happens, obviously, once that gets certified, whether or not the legislature returns to privacy related, take up some issues to try to figure out if they, try to modify that moving forward. We'll have to wait and see. So again, we are anticipating, now that the legislature kind of understands how to function within this COVID dynamic in terms of introducing bills, moving bills through the legislative process. We do anticipate quite a few bills coming out of the gate beginning in December when the legislature reconvenes. So I'll hand it over to Matt, and obviously look forward to working with everybody moving forward.
Hi there, Matt Bender from DGS. The only procurement bill of note this year was SB 588, and I want to clarify on the slide, it's incorrectly listed as an assembly bill. It is a Senate bill, SB 588, by Senator Archuleta. It was a 2-year bill held over from last year. It applies to contracts where the prime contractor made a commitment to use a DVBE subcontractor, and it's a response to audit findings that state agencies didn't have adequate documentation to support their DVBE participation rates. Existing law already required a prime contractor that made a commitment to use a DVBE subcontractor to submit a certification after the contract is over, indicating the actual amount it paid to the DVBE subcontractor and that all payments have been made. This bill requires the state to withhold $10,000 from the final payment until the prime provides that certification. Once that certification is provided, the withhold is released. This bill isn't specific to IT. It applies to all kinds of contracts. So if your firm competes for non-IT services contracts, it can apply to those contracts too. However, it only applies if there's a commitment to use a DVBE subcontractor. And I'll now turn it over to Angela Schell, who is Deputy Director and State Chief Procurement Officer at DGS.
Thanks, Matt. Hopefully y'all can hear me. I'll be quick because I know we're over time a little bit in terms of our presentations. Just a couple of things coming out of the procurement division. So just as Amy said, and most others have said, we spent a significant amount of time at the beginning of this year, and we continue to do so on COVID response, emergency procurements and contracts on behalf of departments. And so my team has really, unfortunately, had to be diverted for a lot of our contracts over to working at the State Operations Center, Emergency Operations Center, and from home on, very rapid procurement needs that came up starting in January, February, and then very active in March. So with that, a lot of our contracts that we had that were ongoing that may have been on the list to re-advertise them in this year. If we had the opportunity, we've decided to extend those contracts so that will give us time to kind of get dispatched from the COVID response and be able to focus back on our regular PD operations. But I do have a few contracts that are coming up. The Cloud FedRAMP moderate contract, we should have full award in the middle of this month. We do have 3 new contracts that we'll be putting out that'll be in addition to the existing contracts that are already out there. And again, we hope to have those finally awarded in the middle of this month. The FedRAMP high contracts and the existing moderate contracts, those will expire on June 14th, 2021. And so we're currently working with our partners at CDT to determine how those contracts will move forward. Again, the ones that we're going to be awarding this month are going to be tied with those that are expiring in 2021. The PC goods contract, we are going to go ahead and extend that to June 30th, 2022. We do have some that have already been extended and some are in process. We have a tablet contract that will expire September 18th, 2021. We have a new solicitation that will be released this month. And we expect award of new contracts sometime in the spring of 2021. The copiers contract extended to May 2022. For Sharp, we do have one under review right now for Canon. We expect to extend that contract as well. And then our printer contracts expire in August of 2021. We are working on a new solicitation now, and we hope that it will be published on Cali Procure before the end of the calendar year with an award in spring of 2021. Those are our statewide contracts. The SLP program, we are currently working with several of our software publishers to look at future volume licensing discount models for the state of California, given the amount of IT spend that we're seeing. We're looking to potentially veer a bit from our traditional model on some of our SLP contracts to see if we can't get volume discounts. And we'll be reaching out to vendors on a as needed basis. For the IT master service agreements, I'm sure you're all interested in what's happening with the IT consulting services MSA. You should have all received, if you're registered on Cali Procure, you should have all received the notice that as of October, we've stopped accepting new applications to the IT MSA. And the reason we've done that is to prepare for the new contract solicitation that will be coming out hopefully before the end of the calendar year. And we anticipate having a fully awarded new contract by April of 2021. So we continue to work on ensuring that we have the right type of contracts, the right type of classifications in the contract, rates of pay. Those are all things that we've talked with industry over the years about, and we continue to talk. And so we are looking at making sure that that contract can be maximized for the state of California, as well as having our vendors able to participate in a beneficial manner as well. And then lastly, we do have some 2021 projects on the horizon. I know you all have been asking about the 401 ITs and when we expect to see those revisions. Again, we had to delay moving forward on that effort due to COVID response and normal PD operations. We are hoping that we will get back to those 401 IT terms and conditions in the latter half of 2021. So unfortunately, I just don't have something more solid for you, but that is our hope right now. We're also working on continuing to simplify our bidding processes, our documents, as well as looking at using our innovative procurement processes, which Marlon touched on a few of those. The RFI2 process, we're looking at all of those things. And then lastly, the procurement division will be working on a e-marketplace / punch-out platform for the next couple of years. We're currently working with CDT on moving through the project process, but that is something that we want to be able to allow our vendors and of course our state departments to be able to have a more streamlined process with a punch-out functionality and working with Fiscal. So that is it for me. I think at this point, I turn it over to Michael Todd, who will facilitate the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Angela. We appreciate that. We're almost done here, the home stretch. First thing I want to mention is, I am Michael Todd from the Department of Technology. And no, my mother didn't misspell my first name, but my mother did raise somebody who can't spell his first name, obviously. So again, Michael Todd, which is one M. We did have some questions that were submitted prior to the meeting, so we're going to go through those first. So if I can have some of our experts available, Amy, Angela, Matt, probably Marlon, maybe Justin, just in case you might want to be able to jump on and answer some of these questions. So I will read the questions and then we'll go ahead and get a response.
Hey, Michael, sorry to interject. I was wondering, since we're in the Q&A session, maybe we can go ahead and remove the slide so we can have more windows to see people. And then also, if there's any additional Q&A people like to ask, giving all of that which is like a dump of information to you all, feel free to use your chat feature. Michael will go ahead and moderate those questions as they come in. All right, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll go get to the ones that were submitted first, and then we'll get to the ones you submit right now. Okay, so the first one, and this one deals with Calnet. Where does the state intend on allowing security services to reside under Calnet? I think, Cami, you could address this one best if you're still there.
Sure, I'm still here. Yeah, the security services that may only be allowed on Calnet as part of the telecommunications service that, and they must provide security for that specific Calnet service. So standalone IT security services are no longer part of Calnet, only those services that secure a telecom service that you're buying through Calnet, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. Okay, the second question is regarding modernization efforts at the state. In some cases that are fueled by the pandemic, what are some of the back-end challenges agencies are seeing with data migration efforts? The second part of the question is, how does policy affect the way you sunset existing systems and fully migrate to new systems? And then, I'm sorry, a third part, what are the common data challenges that agencies are seeing with modernization efforts? So this all centers around modernization here within the state of California. I wasn't sure if Justin was the one that would address that, or Amy?
I could cover the data pieces.
Okay, Manveer.
The first part and the third part, it sounds like they center around common challenges that departments are facing in data migration. So I think that what those common challenges that we've seen surface over the last several months are, especially with COVID, are number one, insufficient data governance. We found that departments don't necessarily do a great job of identifying what data they have or defining it or classifying it. They don't really have a clear understanding of who the owners is and who's the kind of the decision maker behind that data. And then they're also, they don't have a good handle on any kind of data suppression requirements or anything that needs to be put in place to make that data shareable or make it available to others. Another big limitation we found was on the skill sets that we find, specifically data engineering. We found that there's a huge value in implementing data pipelines and ETL tools. But a lot of departments, number one, don't have those solutions available to them. And number two, they don't have the skill sets to actually go in and build them out and put in the logic to clean the data, to extract the data, clean it, and make it usable. So I think those are the two, because those are the challenges that we've seen.
Okay, thank you. And I think, Manveer, these next ones might be for you too, we'll see. The third question is, what are your thoughts on the advent and use of predictive analytics in state government? What types of predictive or AI projects are being done today or in the roadmap, and what types of challenges are they tackling?
So I talked about some of this in my presentation. We're looking at we've done a lot of work in analytics, right? We're using a lot more digital. We're using a lot more data visualization tools. As far as going down that path is this our current governor is very big on dashboarding and boiling down big data into meaningful charts that could be used to kind of tell the story behind it, but also support decision making. So we've been implementing a lot of different tools, and we have a very diverse strategy, right? We've been using Tableau visuals, we've been using Power BI, we've been using Looker. So it's pretty diverse. It's just building that skill set in-house has been kind of the priority of effectively visualizing data.
I'll go ahead and add to Manveer's response there, because part of the question was asking about some of the challenges. And that's in any time that you have those data models where you're looking at that, you've really got to look at the biases that are behind the model and make sure that you're not presenting the information, in a skewed way. And so that's one of the things we want to address in the AI initiative, is kind of coming up with some guidelines of how you can look at a tool and look at the model behind it and the biases and make sure that we're representing the data the correct way. So that will be addressed in some of the deliverables from the AI initiative.
Thank you, Pam. We'll move to question number 4 regarding bots. It says, more and more agencies are adopting robotic process automation technology. Is CDT involved in some of these initiatives?
So DMV is probably the department that I'm aware of that's doing the most with RPA right now. And they're looking at it to address a lot of their internal processes, to address their backlogs for, I think it's motor carrier permits, occupational licensing, and accident reporting. So it's like their back end office. And it's really helping automate their data collection and processing. And yeah, we are engaged with them while they're leading their internal project effort. They are part of our, they're members of our statewide AI initiative. And so they're coming to the table with us and helping us drive this initiative forward.
Okay, question number 5. I think, Amy, this one is for you. Are there plans, and they're asking hopefully, to include vendor input into the strategic plan that CDT is currently developing?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Justin, I don't know if he's still on. There's so many screens now. That's part of the engagement process. We wanted to make sure that the various stakeholder, the locals, in fact, local city and counties are involved in this. The vendor community, the legislative staffer, obviously the state departments who are going to be the most beneficiary out of the strategic plan. Everybody is going to get an opportunity to provide input. So I don't know if Justin's here, can speak to it more.
No, I think you hit the high points there, Amy.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Question number 6. Is it still a goal to allow smaller digital services companies to participate in projects? If so, given that the Agile Developer pre-qualified procurement pool is no longer available, how will the state create the necessary conditions for small companies to win bids?
Let me answer that, Michael.
Thank you.
So the pre-qualified vendor pool actually is still being utilized. We want to do a refresh on it. We first, we want to take actually deliberate steps on this because we want to get feedback from the community and see where we can improve our pre-qualified vendor pool. The Agile has been instrumental in several of the project success for the state. So we want to make sure that we continue that success. Anticipate Q1 of 2021 that we are going through the refresh. And there's also some interest to expand the pre-qualified vendor pool. Just like how you heard today, data analyst has been critical to the state. GIS has been expanding. So we want to look at those opportunities and see if we can land and expand beyond the Agile developer for pre-qualified vendor pool.
Thank you, Marlon. Question number 7, does the state desire to create open source solutions that can be easily enhanced and shared throughout the public sector? If so, how might the state include procurement document criteria that requires projects to utilize open source technology?
I can answer the procurement side. I mentioned this on my presentation today that we've been using or leveraging challenge-based procurement approach where we are open to alternative ideas, innovative solutions, even open source technology. If vendors have the solution to solve the problem that the state is facing, and that involves open technology, we're more than welcome to recognize those and evaluate those. And so that's been our I would say approach to help really understand what are the alternative solutions out there rather than sticking with what we are commonly comfortable with.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the state has issued policy around open source and sharing data where applicable. We have a code repository out there that state agencies are supposed to put their open source code out there so it could be made available to others. And then most recently we did make the COVID modeling application, Calcat, open source and available to others to use as well. So So the answer is yeah, we do use open source technology, and we do try to make it available to others where possible.
Marlon Manvier, thank you very much. The next one, this one I hope we have an answer to. I think we're doing a little research on it, but the question is, we report to DVBEs and small businesses and notice that out of 18 million purchased in IT goods in DVBE acquisition in July through September, I guess this year, 14 million went to one Sacramento-based vendor. We'd like to ask, is this okay with the state and CDT? And I know Marlon, Angela, Matt, John have all looked into this. I'll let you guys respond to that.
I can start. Oh,
ahead,
Marlon,
Angela.
you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, I just, we did a search and we're not able to find the specific contract that was alluded to in the email. So it's hard for us to kind of, evaluate what happened on that specific procurement. But the state's perspective is that we always want to achieve DVBE participation, whether it's by a direct award or by subcontracting to DVBE firms. And so, we push our departments to make sure that they're, achieving a minimum of 3% in their annual spend with DVBE entities. And so, unfortunately, without a little more detailed information, I can't go in and look specifically at that particular contract.